Okay, so now we are live. Thank you very much to being here with us. I would like first to thank to Rick Schifferstein, it's that the correct pronouns, I hope, to be here with us. This is our 29th Food Talk, and Rick will talk about connecting food and design, challenges and opportunities. Rick Schifferstein is Associate Professor at the Faculty of Industrial Design Engineering of Delft University of Technology, and his topics of interest include multisensory perception, food design, and experience-driven innovation. He contributed to more than 75 papers in international scientific journals, including Acta Psychologica, Food Quality and Preference, Chemical Senses, Materials and Design, and International Journal of Food Design. He is principal editor of the International Journal of Food Design and co-editor of the books Food, People and Society, Product Experience, from Floating Wheelchairs to Mobile Car Parks, and Advanced Design Methods for Successful Innovation. He is also the founder and director of the Food and Eating Design Lab, in which staff members and design students work together to improve people's interactions with their daily foods. So thank you, Rick, for being here with us. The stage is yours. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Ricardo, and thank you for inviting me to give a talk here. So I'm in the Netherlands at the moment, but I'm giving a talk in Portugal. So these are one of the advantages of this situation. Although I would like to come to Portugal next time, if there's a possibility. And
we hope so. We hope so.
That would be great. I'm going to try to share my screen now and to start my presentation. Yes. So it's always a bit looking, you know, how is it going? I don't know. Yes. So you should be able to see my screen now.
Yes, yes.
Great. So we're going to talk about food and design, or the connection with food and design. And as Ricardo told you, I'm working at Delft University of Technology. And when I started working there, like I transferred from Wageningen University to Delft about 20 years ago. And during my job interview, my boss said, you know, we're really happy that you're coming here, but we don't do food over here. Oh, sorry. But fortunately, that changed a few years ago. And but what we saw about the time when I came to food, and it's the same experience as my colleague had here, with whom I've written a paper recently, Marielle Bordewijk. She was a student at that time, and she wanted to design with food, but also to her, the staff said, you know, we don't do food over here. You know, we make things like cups, things that are durable, mass market produced, and not food products. And at that time, she did a project with Ola, the ice cream company from Unilever. And this is the design that she made there with her group, you know, but she couldn't graduate at that time. But fortunately, during the last few years, the connection between food and design has grown stronger. And yeah, especially because I have a food background. I studied in Wageningen at the Agricultural University. I really wanted to connect designers with food, because there are a lot of challenges, and you know, we can improve a lot. And it's only designers who have been trained to be creative, and so to really come with new solutions for all the troubles we are facing. And so I think it's really good that we now connect food and design. And yeah, since I work at an industrial design faculty, I've been thinking about, you know, what else do we need to learn, the designers that we already have, about food? Because food is a different type of material to work with. And that is what I've been focusing on during the last few years to get a grip on, what do I need to teach to people who already know a lot about designing. And so I don't teach much of design methodology, but I make the designers aware of what is special in the area of food. And I think that many people with a design background will go through that same search when they start working in the food area. And now with Marielle, in the paper that I wrote with her, we defined 5 areas of which we think that is specific for food design. So, and one of the most important ones, of course, is that the material, the food, is or used to be alive. So all the vegetables that you see here, they are still breathing, they are changing. And this characteristic of the material, that it's changing, under your hands while you're working with it, that is, something you really need to take into account when you design. And you can think about the culinary sector, where really like food is deteriorating by the minute, as soon as it's cooked, it's deteriorating. But most food designs, they have a bit more time, but the food is changing. Like you have the ripening of the fruits here in this image, banana going from green to yellow and then getting brown. You can think about germination of potatoes or of beans or pods, but it's also with meat, for example, that ages. So many food products go through this cycle. And of course, you also have the deterioration that goes quite fast. Every food deteriorates. And the only thing is that food technologists have tried to come up with means to delay the decay of food. But perhaps the decay of food can also be a quality that we can design for. And because food deteriorates so fast, on the other hand, consumers, they find freshness very important. And what exactly freshness is, there may be discussions about that. But what we see is that people like things to be fresh. So you see more and more fresh products also in the supermarkets. And but people also like convenience. So you see, for example, in this package, you don't have to select all the vegetables yourself anymore, but the supermarket has put them together in a package so you can easily prepare it. And you will also have like cut vegetables instead of, that you have to clean them yourself. But of course, the food technologists have to work on these cut vegetables because they are more prone to decay than when you have the full vegetables. So you have to think about, the packaging materials, and perhaps you have to have gas in the packaging material to make sure that it keeps well. But providing people with freshness is very important, and especially in Western societies where people are used to having a lot of comfort, convenience, they want to have a lot of freshness also. And because you want to have fresh products, you also need to think about the packaging, because otherwise, it deteriorates. So developing good packaging is really, a main topic. And also in terms of sustainability, because if every food is packaged, you also have a lot of material, for example, that is thrown away. But if you use less packaging material, perhaps then the food deteriorates faster. So where do you find the balance between packaging material and the food itself? Okay, so that was the first factor that was about this living material. And the second factor that we identified was that food is really part of the ecosystem. So by changing food or different production methods, you have an effect on the ecosystem, and also the waste has an effect on the ecosystem. And like many topics, we know that sustainability is extremely important at the moment because we have so many people on the earth, and it's really a challenge to have enough food for everyone and to make sure, that we don't put too much pressure on the ecosystem. So sustainability is a major topic. And this is a project, this is a website from one of my former students who went to Indonesia to help save the rainforest. because what's happening is that a lot of rainforest is cut to have palm oil plantations or soybean plantations. And what this student of mine with his company tries to do is to see what the value of the rainforest is, not only in terms of, we need all these plants and trees, but also how can we make money of the products that are already in the rainforest. So we can save the rainforest, save the animals, but also provide income for the people who live next to the rainforest. So with this company, Forest-Wise, they look for products that are already in the rainforest from the plants. And so they have these different products like butter and, for example, sugar palm. And by using these products and also processing them on site, then the rainforest also gets commercial value that people can live from in the area. And this is a project by Chloe Rutzerfeld, and she's joining us today in the audience. So I'm happy that she's here. And in her project, she developed a new process to make stroopwafels, which is like a Dutch delicacy. And what she did was that she uses like the whole vegetable. So in this case, beet, or carrots, and she uses the whole vegetable to make the different elements of this delicacy. So sustainability is also, looking what you can do with all these byproducts that you have, not just take, for example, the sugar out and throw the rest away, but what can you do with these byproducts? And we see that more and more that, for example, the coffee grind or the shells of cocoa beans, they are used and for other materials. And another example is also these do-it-yourself materials where designers use food products or the byproducts to create new materials themselves that they can work with. Now, another theme connected to sustainability here is about seasonal and regional products. And, in the past, a lot of products were very regional. When people couldn't travel so far, you had your regional products that were harvested in a certain season, and you just use these products that were close by, that were relatively cheap. And with the current system, we have decreased the amount of seasonality in the products. Milk is available all year round, but also a lot of vegetables. And we can also, fly in vegetables from China, for example, from the south of Europe, from America. And so we've lost like the sense of what is seasonal or regional. And actually products like milk and eggs, they are connected to fertility cycles. So they're also seasonal products originally. And perhaps, of course, it's nice to have products all year round, but you're also losing something. Like, for example, when I was a small child, we only had oranges in December, when just before Christmas. Then that was when the oranges came in the stores, and they all had a very good taste, whereas the oranges that I buy now, they're often quite dry because they have been in storage like for months. And so we also lose some quality by keeping it available all year long. And of course, some chefs use that concept, of using seasonal products because the quality is better in season. And one of my co-workers, Boudewijn Boom, started a project on this, which was on this seasonality and how we can work with it. Are products in season also more sustainable or more healthy? And one of the things, that he found out during his search was that, seasonality, you may define it in different ways. And for example, asparagus, if we have agricultural production of asparagus in Holland, it will only be there in certain months. So you have a short season, whereas in Peru, you can harvest asparagus the whole year round. And so in Peru, asparagus is not a seasonal product, and you can just fly them in, to Holland or to Belgium or wherever you are. And but it's like yeah, you have something new to think about. You know, what will be sustainable if we try to expand the production in Holland or in Belgium, or whether we fly them in, and what are the advantages, disadvantages of doing that. And whereas, for example, in Peru, uh, they have a shortage of water, so that's a challenge over there. So how do we affect the ecosystem the most, you know, with wherever we produce these vegetables? Okay. Yeah, one of the sustainability challenges is also the amount of meat that we consume. We know that meat, especially beef, is very yeah, very demanding for the environment. So a lot of carbon, greenhouse emissions, and in general, yeah, eating plants is more sustainable than eating meat. So how can we reduce the amount of meat that we eat? I'm working on a project with Anne Kransbühler, my colleague, and to see how we can discourage the eating of meat. And there are some activist groups, for example, that make these stickers that they put on meat, so that when you come in the supermarket, you find out these stickers that eating meat makes animals suffer, for example. And we're going to look, you know, what is the impact of such stickers on the perception of the meat. And we've made, for example, different types of stickers. So one is about animal suffering, one is about destroying the rainforest, one is about personal effect on your health. And we're going to see, you know, what kind of messages, what kind of emotions they elicit, and which are most effective in convincing people to change their behaviors. Another thing you could do is, for example, reduce the amount of meat and meat products. Like this was a project in which Marielle Bordewijk and Angelique Smijt, they made different meat cuts, and they tried to reduce the amount of meat in the meat cut. So people would still have the impression that they would be eating just meat. And but in fact, the product could be like from 30 to 100% vegetarian. And of course, that's also a possibility to reduce the amount of meat we eat. Yeah. Another project, yeah, you probably have seen already some things about is that with insects, by breeding insects, you can create a lot more food, you know, in a short time, where you can, you know, have a high protein food for many people. Whereas with cows, you know, you waste a lot of protein, and you cannot produce that much meat in short time. So insect foods may be more sustainable, but especially in the West, we're not used to eating insects, and we think that insects are dangerous or dirty, and they're just a nuisance. So how can we convince people to eat insects? What you can do is grind them. For example, you grind them and you put them in cookies, and so that people don't see it anymore. But perhaps, you know, you should change like the logo, and which has more associations with insects to make it like an interesting product. This was another project on insect eating from a student of mine, and he created a restaurant where you could eat insects. And yeah, what he did was, you know, not just look at the bad side of the insect, but look at the positive side of insects. For example, people may be intrigued, like when you have this this pot, you know, with a light in it, and you can see those crawling insects. I mean, it may be a bit spooky, but it might also be very interesting and fascinating. And the idea here was that you can change the flavor of insects by letting the insects eat different materials. So if you use blueberries, you may get a different flavors than when you feed them Oreos or orange. And perhaps in that way, you can make them more popular. And perhaps you should also serve them, you know, not on a plate, but perhaps you need these flagstones to serve them, to make sure that it's also something special. Those might be strategies. This is another project on sustainability with a different angle, and it was on the consumption of leftover vegetables and to reduce the amount of leftover vegetables. because what we saw was that in people, they, especially for vegetables, they have a lot in their fridge, but they forget about it. Especially, if you already use part of it, you forget about the rest. So they put it in the fridge and then throw it away a few days later, which is, a pity. So my student, she made like this box where you could save all your leftovers together, and that's not so new. But the new thing is the cover of the box, and the idea was to really make a distinction in the system, and to put at the front, you would put the stem and the leaf vegetables that deteriorate very fast, whereas flowers and seeds, they keep longer, and root and tubers, you can keep them for a long time. So by making the box, you would have an overview of all your different vegetables, and you would also see, the things at the front, you need to use them first. So, and we hope that this, would encourage people to use their leftovers in a better way and use them more so they don't deteriorate. Good. We talked about 2 themes already, and this is the 3rd theme, that food becomes part of us. So that's something you normally don't have in industrial design, but we eat things and we digest it, and then it becomes part of our body. So what are the consequences of that? One of the things is that we really want to make sure that food is safe. So wherever it comes from or who produces it, we want to make sure that whatever we eat is safe and that we can rely on its quality. So we might want to know, who has produced it. Another thing is that we try to stimulate healthy eating, a healthy diet. So we all have agencies in every country, who come up with different tools that help us to eat healthy. Like this is the Dutch system, which was introduced 50 or 60 years ago, but it's still, most of it is still unchanged. And so we're still using these tools, although they change a bit in shape and content. But we might also think about the interaction, how we eat. Like the happy fork is a fork that tries to reduce your eating speed. And because you reduce your eating speed, you pay more attention to the food and you may not overeat, which helps in fighting obesity. Or the problem, every parent knows that the children don't want to eat their vegetables. So with these funny plates, you can make a story out of it, which can stimulate children to eat their vegetables. Now, this is a project from Heidi Mao, and this built on the observations that people tend to eat less when the stuff that they eat is more satiating. So as if you perceive, you have something in your mouth and that you have a big bolus in your mouth, you also seem to feel more satisfied from eating that. So she really wanted to work with textures, and working with food textures, it's quite new for designers. So she wanted to make people conscious of their snacking behavior by really, paying attention to what you have in your mouth and also the amount that you eat. And the more that you chew and the more it stays in your mouth, the more likely that you start feeling filled up. So what she did was really to look at all different types of materials and cooking techniques that give you more texture in the mouth so that you become more aware of what you eat. And she also tried to develop an online platform where you could experiment with that, and you could like select hardness, crumbliness, and then introduce that in your designing of your foods. I don't know if it's still online, but she has been working on this during her project. And the fourth theme that we identified is that food is really a multi-sensory experience. So you use all your senses. And normally in industrial design, you don't work a lot with smell and certainly not with taste. So it gives different sensory inputs that you have to become aware of also in your design practice. And we know, of course, that chefs, they are trained, and giving us great 5-dimensional food experiences. But what can we do as designers? Because we're not trained as chefs. And well, for example, we can help in flavor designs, not by making the flavors, we have the flavor chemists for that, but by relating it to meaning. And we are used to creating like dimensions, domains of meaning. And so we can create mood boards that can be related to the flavors, for example. So this is a mood board that my colleague Marielle created for delicious nature. And here you see another one for insane indulgence. And so we can support, the development of flavors or flavor profiles for the food industry by developing these mood boards and meaning interpretation. But this is a project from another student who helped us enjoy food more by incorporating this magnifying glass in a spoon, so that during eating you could see more what you would eat, and like those tomatoes with all those small seeds, by creating more connection with the food and by paying more attention to your food, you could become more aware and enjoying more. Okay, and then our fifth topic is that food, of course, we eat every day, we drink every day. And as a consequence, food is embedded in daily practices. We also need to prepare food, a lot of foods need to be heated, or we buy food that is already heated. But because it's embedded in these daily practices, there are also a lot of cultural influences. Traditionally, that was because some foods were available in the region and different practices were developed, how to prepare it. And but still, we talk about Chinese food, Italian food, and so all these different cultures and countries, they bring in a different way of preparing. And that also gives new opportunities. For example, if you want to buy lasagna, of course, there are many different variations, like you have a fresh pasta you can buy, you can have these dried blades, and then you can all these varieties like without gluten or whole wheat lasagna. And but in addition to that, you also have different levels of preparation. So you can start out with this box with fresh vegetables. You can choose your fresh vegetables, or you can buy them here in this this box. But you also have like a dry form of lasagna, this is like a package and you just add water and a few fresh ingredients and you have lasagna. Or if you really want to be very convenient, you can buy it ready-made. And of course, in the end, you all get lasagna, and probably this first one is tastier than the last one. But in principle, it's more or less the same products. But of course, in terms of what you offer in the supermarket, these three are very different. So because you need to prepare, you can have all these intermediate stages as well that you can sell in the supermarket. So that really provides a lot of opportunities for design, in terms of what type of products and for what type of market you're developing the product. Because we have all these rituals and habits connected to food, we're also sometimes a bit stuck in certain ways of doing. And for example, what we see in food consumption is that people don't eat enough vegetables and don't eat enough fruit. And one of my students, Merel Dubbeldam, she wanted to stimulate Dutch people to eat more fruit. And what we saw is that in Holland, people only eat fruit as a snack, but we don't use it as part of the main meal or as part of our lunch because we eat sandwiches there. And because Dutch people really like to eat a lot of sandwiches, Merel, she developed recipes specifically to put in sandwiches. And so she introduced more fruit in these sandwiches. And she developed also concept for the caterers so that they could introduce more fruit into the products they offer at lunchtime. And so this is how it looked. She called it a double bommetje, probably related to her last name. And so there were sandwiches with, and you can see the grapes here that she introduced, and she had more vegetables on there as well. Okay, and I already said, you know, there's a cultural component. We have rituals that that are ingrained in different cultures. And this is a project from Randy Kadarman, and he wanted to develop a ritual to connect people better, to use food to tell stories. And the idea was that if you would like to connect with a person, you would like to perhaps relive some precious memories. And in order to, to do that in a very multi-sensory, very engaging way, you could use food for that by engaging all the different senses, and then by sharing your experience with your loved ones, with whom you would like to share your precious memories. And what he did was that he started out with a certain story. And, oh, sorry. Started out with a certain story and tried to translate that story into the different senses. So all the different elements of the story, he wanted to, transform them into small elements of these different senses. And in the end, the idea was to develop a recipe for a 3D printer. And then what you could do is that you could make a poem out of it. And he took the form of a haiku, a Japanese poem consisting of 3 lines. And then there would be 3 objects that were 3D printed. And those would then communicate the poem. So you could pick up this, this product from the 3D printer, and then you would have the haiku there. 3 objects telling different part of your experience. Good. So we talked about these 3 components. Oh no, so the 5 elements, the specifics of food design. I'm just going to check my time. Okay. So these are the things that are specific about food design, that the material is alive, part of the ecosystem, the food also is ingested, you have multisensory enjoyment, and it's embedded in daily practices. Now, the next question I would like to tackle is not, you know, what makes food special to designers, but what can designers contribute to the food industry? And because I was trained in marketing, and there we had food chemistry and we had nutrition, and we had good connection with the food industry. And I saw that there are a lot of opportunities for designers to work with the food industry. And but actually, what you are doing as if you try to develop a food product that industry could sell, you know, it's important to tackle 3 different topics. So you have the consumer, you have to have knowledge about, you have to have knowledge about the business environment, and also about the food technology. So in order to have a successful product, you have to have these 3 components together. And what food industry does now, and I heard this, for example, from Unilever, is that they hire chefs to integrate these 3 areas. And but you know, a chef is trained in certain techniques, and of course, if the chef knows the company well, he knows a lot about the business. And but often, you know, he has a certain specialty. For example, he may know a lot about the Asian cuisine or about the Italian cuisine, but that's a limited area where he has his expertise in. And I think that designers could also play a role in this. You don't need just a chef, and I think the designer can interact with all these people in a different way, and also be more open actually than the chef would do his culinary innovation. But what we saw with designers is that if a designer was connected to food, that he would only be designing cups or glasses or like a coffee maker or a beer tap. So products connected to food, but not the food itself. It could be about the packaging. And so there was not that much relationship between the industrial designer and the food in these designs. So what I think, the designer could add is that the designer could really like open up the projects and also shape tools to engage more people, all the people you need in the cooperation, and then structure and facilitate the cooperation, and also help to integrate the expertise. So to come to the first point, a designer, when a designer works with food, he doesn't only think about the food, but he also starts thinking about all these topics that are related to food. And, food industry, if I have a peanut factory, I'm tend to be very focused on the peanuts, and I know that I need a package and I know that there's a consumer, but I tend to be focused on the technology and about the business model behind it. But for a designer, it's logical to really like explore everything that is connected to it. So also sustainability up to the role in society and history and food safety. And I think that's a quality of designers, that they also always look at the bigger picture. And then to engage different types of people, it's not just a boring meeting, but they bring something extra to the table to shape tools. Like, for example, instead of a kickoff, organize a lunch with inspirational booklets, create sensitizing packages or card sets, what I'll discuss also. And then also, when they create something, they take along the audience by creating sketches or 3D models, prototypes. So they make it a much more engaging process. And so that is also what I really like about designers, that you get a different vibe because all these things are created and support, your trajectory. And for example, in the tools, also instead of in doing research, for example, this is from a set of colleagues of mine who created like a tool to determine all the different emotions that were connected to a certain ritual. And, it's more colorful. They also use pictures in that. And in creating, for example, we have recently developed this card set. And because, as I said, designers, they take the topic more broadly, and we define 7 different topics that should be included, we think, in every food design. So by focusing, on the consumption situation, but also policy considerations, distribution, marketing, kitchen management, you really get a broad view on what food can be. And each of these topics, we had 5 cards, and they were designed like this, an icon, a title, a question, and then on the back of the card, there were some examples of topics. And these cards are available if you send me an email. We can get you a PDF if you want to work with it. Okay. So we think that the food designers or the designers also can structure cooperation. For example, if as a designer you come into a company, sometimes you notice that all these different departments, they're supposed to work together, but they often compete with each other because, they if one does it better, they get more budget, something like that. And to have a designer coming in as external partner and really boosting the cooperation, it can really help also to get this external perspective on what's going on, and then also guarding the quality of a product concept that's developed over all these departments and throughout the process. And then later on, integrate the information. The designer also knows, you need all these people, and so everyone is valuable. Designers are also trained to communicate with people with different backgrounds. So they really like take it all together and integrate this information. Good. And so we see, the role of the designer as really being in the middle of this process and then taking into account all these different areas that are relevant for food. So I talked to you about the specifics of food design and also about the role designer can have in relation to the food industry. And if you want to know more, I've created a website and Ricardo already mentioned it. It's about the Food and Eating Design Lab. So, and there you can find information on the different projects that we do. So we try to promote health and sustainable well-being and through our food design projects. So you can get an introduction, but also an overview of all the projects we did. You might recognize already some of the topics in the slides that I've shown you. And we give a regular overview also on the projects that we're working on. And so I thank you for your attention, and please let me know if there are any questions.
Thank you so much, Rick. It was a pleasure to see your presentation because there are, for me, for example, as a designer, I already have this in mind, some of the thoughts that you talked about. But I have a question for you. What do you think, or what is the main problem for design nowadays to get this kind of awareness in the consumer or in the industry of food, to bring designers into the development of food products and services and or experiences?
I'll just stop sharing for a minute. Okay. Can you repeat your?
Yeah. What do you think? Why there is so few designers working at the beginning of the process in the development of food products and services? While it's like the paper that you present about the and you give the example of the scones at the beginning of the paper, but why is not the role of the designer more acknowledged in the industry, in the development of food products? Or, for example, why the consumer doesn't have this kind of awareness why design is important in the food industry or in the gastronomy, for example, that there is already this maximum figure that is the chef, but there is this kind of disconnection between the two worlds.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I think, it started out, like in the food industry. Yeah, of course, you have a lot of technical experts, and you also need a lot of technical expertise, to make the products. And and I think a lot of industrial areas started out like that, starting out from the technology, building from that, and not being really aware that, being creative is something different. And and designers have, grown more influential in many other areas, but for food, they were relatively late. And in other industries, they came up much earlier. And but now I have a lot of cooperation project also with Wageningen University, and we really see that we are doing a lot of projects together. So I think that is going better. And but also, there is a huge difference between the food industry and the culinary sector. I did talk about, that Unilever is employing a chef, but I think there are very few chefs, and I did my whole training more connected to food chemistry, food technology. And we even had a culinary school in the same small town, but there was like no connection at that time. And we just see it now, and also people like you are trying to make this connection. And but it's really a challenge. And also if I talk to chefs, they tell me exactly the same stories. So we are aware of this discrepancy, which is really strange, of
Yeah,
course.
But for example, in one side, we have the industry of food that, for example, I don't know about Netherlands, but here, for example, in Portugal, we have the R&D development departments, that there is all the technical areas that are important to the development of food products like nutrition, safety, and so on. And most of the time, the designer will become at the end of the process just to make the beauty of the things, as if we can say in this way, to make the branding, to make the packaging, and I think that the role of the designer is much more, how can I say that? I think that if the designer is part of the beginning of the process in the development of the concept of the product itself, it could be more related to the end consumer, more engaged, more aware of all these parts and these things that you are talking about. In one side, there is the industry, and the other side we have the restaurants and the culinary arts and the gastronomy, where there is the figure of the chef, who is the celebrity nowadays, that has the knowledge to make the dishes, to make the menu. And also at some points during his career, of course, they work with designers. Why we can see these relationships more in a collaborative way than this kind of idea that there are very big egos working that doesn't want to work together. And I don't know why, because I don't have problems to work with chefs, because I really like, and I learn a lot from them. So there is this kind of disconnection that it's very odd and very strange.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think it's relatively new for us all to work together, you know. But I see also that we are more and more open to it. And for example, from the chefs, at some point, you know, they became more interested in food technology, and you got this molecular gastronomy, for example. And that's also the reason why I recently wrote a paper, you know, especially about food perception for a culinary journal, because I think, hey, you know, they're doing food technology now, but not yet sensory perception. And we just need to grow together. And I don't know exactly, you know, why that hasn't happened in the past, but I think we're ripe for that now. Yeah.
I hope so. There is someone who wants to make a question. Chloe?
Yeah, a question, or perhaps what I notice, I also work as food designer, but more also a bit towards the future, is this balance of real collaboration often, because it's a bit more new. And if it's not directly commercial, like commercial, yeah, that it's commercial, that you can sell it, that you can make money out of it, then it's difficult to have a real collaboration, because they feel if they have to invest in it and if they have to explore and do a lot of research, but they cannot sell it or they cannot make money out of it directly, they are a bit afraid to work with designers. And that is my experience. So the best innovations often don't happen because people are afraid that it doesn't make money. And then they have to sort of connect with the board and say, okay, we do want to explore this or research this. But yeah, I don't know how Rick sees this, but that is, in my experience, what is happening.
Yeah, I can imagine you're right. We do see, for example, a lot of exploration with some chefs. You know, the chef from El Bulli has his own laboratory that so he's very interested in this innovation, and I'm sure he works also with designers. And but that's really an exception, you know, where of course a very high-end restaurant that has more funding, more means, can do some exceptional things. But I see, for example, at Unilever that research and development is downsized like all the time. And the funny thing is that Unilever recently developed more like a design lab for their food, but now they've thrown out all the research, you know, all the hard science. And so they're cutting down on that part. And I'm not sure whether this is a good development. Of course, yeah, I like it. You know, I got more students that are appointed there now. But yeah, then another part is missing. So yeah, it's still struggling. Yeah.
Okay, anyone has more questions for Rick?
I do.
Yes.
Hi, Rick. Thank you so much for your presentation. I thought it was quite amazing how in under an hour you managed to collect so many of the complexity of food, so many issues and problems that we face today, and even threw in a few projects and solutions. And I think you addressed something that I think it's quite interesting to me because I haven't kind of realized it. But whenever we talk about food design, we are always addressing a bit of a gap in the education people have, because even in a master in food design, that's the kind of first level that you can get as an education in food design. Nobody starts in high school or even in a bachelor's degree. You know, there's always, either, like you mentioned, either you have a background in design and we need to kind of plug in the food, or you have a food background and you need to kind of adjust the design thinking to kind of merge it into food design, right? So I could relate a bit to what you said, because I'm an architect, so clearly the food came to the architecture background. And I just wanted to ask you, do you feel are the biggest challenges you face when you try to explain food as a material or as a field of knowledge to the students that have a design background? What do you feel is the biggest resistance or preconceived idea, or what do you have to fight with?
Well, I wouldn't say I have to fight with anything. The students I get, you know, they're specifically interested also in food and eating design, and generally design students are very open to learn, you know, different stuff. So I just noticed that they're very interested in what's happening. And the only thing I noticed, what to me is intriguing, is this food, you know, it's deteriorating, it's alive. And I noticed that they found that a really hard part, you know, because that's also the chemistry, the biology they're not so used to. So they had a bit more trouble in that. So I'm going to invest more time in that. But for the rest, everyone is really excited about this new field. Yeah.
But that gives me hope.
Okay, so we have, I don't know if this is a question or just a comment for you, Rick, from Steph Mars. This is on Facebook.
Oh.
And she's saying that, I wonder how food media can help raise the importance of designers' role within the food systems. They are often the key in raising profile of the chefs using sustainable innovation. I don't know if this is a question or just a comment.
Yeah, I haven't thought about that yet. So she's asking about the food media and how can they help. Yeah, I'm not sure yet. I think what we see is that the media help in celebrity chefs, but I noticed that there are also quite some publicity about what food designers do, you know. But what happens is that often, you know, a bit of the weird projects, they get a lot of attention, you know, or the very futuristic projects. And of course, a lot of things are also happening, you know, which are much closer to your own home and your own kitchen. And but even there, I think, you know, that a lot of people, you know, they make photographs of their food, you know, and they put it on Twitter or Facebook. And so I think that food will always, you know, be an important topic for people. Yeah. And but I'm not sure yet about the role of the media.
I totally agree that what you're saying, because nowadays I think one of the problems for food design has taken so long to become this new territory, this new discipline, this solidity in the academia, was partly because of this idea of speculation in the projects. I know that this kind of speculative design, food design projects are important nowadays. The designers make this kind of experimentation, they work with the experience and so on. But I think that people looks at this kind of projects and don't see what we are talking about, this idea of developing a product or a service that could be more commercial and that could be, we could buy it in the shelf of the supermarket, because these are just experimentations on food that are this ephemeral characteristic. They are beauty, they are pretty, but in the end, it's just a bunch of projects that speculate about food. And I think that this could be interesting in the future, but first we have to do this kind of work in create some kind of literacy in people to create this awareness about what is food design and what food design, or the relationship between design and food, is important nowadays.
Yeah, it's also, you know, there's a whole spectrum of possibilities. What I see, for example, is that in Holland you have the Design Academy, where Marije Vogelsang also had a department, and you know their projects are much more artistic, and so they are not things, you know, that you would easily see on the market. And I see that in Delft, you know, we try more to create a bridge, you know, with the real world, but we need those projects to be inspired, you know, to get
of course
ideas. And yeah, so I like also this diversity that's going on in all these different areas. And yeah, I'm curious about what's going to happen, you know,
next in the future.
Yeah. Of
Our
course,
future food scenarios.
well, we also have like different master programs now. You know, you just started in Portugal, and there's a program in Italy, and I think in Brussels as well. And all these projects, they have like a bit of a different focus. So there will be different types of designers coming out, but of course we all need them all.
Yeah, of course. Different approaches, of course.
Yeah.
So anyone has more questions? No?
Can I ask a question /
Yes.
favor to Rick, which is like, you mentioned a paper on the perception of food, like perceiving food, but is it open access? Can we, where can we get it? Has it been published?
Yeah. And we try to publish everything open access nowadays.
Okay.
And it's in the Journal of what's it called? Journal of Culinary Technology, I think it's
Okay.
called. Yeah.
Thank you. And thank you for the presentation. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So our students are very quiet today, doesn't have questions as usual.
They had a busy day yesterday.
Yeah, and today it's the same. So from Facebook, there is no more questions. So, okay. So I will thank you again, Rick. It was a pleasure to see our presentation, listen to you. And I hope that in the future you could join us in Portugal in person, not by Zoom. And thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. I look forward to coming to Portugal sometime. And it was great to have the opportunity to talk to you all.
Okay, thank you. Thank you all.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.